from Star Studios in Denison, Texas, this is Coffee with a Sign Painter, a weekly podcast hosted by sign painter Sean Starr that consists of interviews with other sign painters and some of the customers and characters Sean comes across while running his studio.
Welcome back to Coffee with a Sign Painter. Today's episode, I will be speaking with Cal Trauter of Raven Sign Company up in British Columbia, Canada. Cal and I have crossed paths for several years now through some of the sign-making forums. He's also friends with my buddies up that way, John Lenig and Chris DeBell, and I've been wanting to have him on the show for a while, and the other day he was teasing me through Facebook about the fact that we are going to relocate our studio back to Denton, Texas, which is only about an hour away. And so we started razzing each other back and forth, and I'm like, hey, why aren't you on my show? So today I get him on the show, and we get to talk to him about his path in becoming a sign painter and some of his history on how he got where he's at, and some of the things related to the letterhead meets in that area of the world that he's participated in the central United States, central Canada type area. And so yeah, it's a good conversation and interesting guy, and get to talk about music and all the other typical stuff that we do and some of the things that keep you motivated as an artist. And so here we go. We will go ahead and talk to Cal Trauter of Raven Sign Company in British Columbia. So you're up British Columbia, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I got turned on to your work, I believe Chris DeBell is the first one that... but then I was looking, I think we've crossed paths in the past on some of the other forums, haven't we?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. So, how's it going?
Well, it's pretty good. I was a little surprised by your request to do the interview.
Why?
Well, I just wasn't expecting it, so it's always nice to be surprised.
That's right, man. If you go through life just doing what you expect, things are boring.
Exactly.
So, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is you've what's the word? You've teased me a few times about our constant vagabond gypsy moving ways. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about that.
Well, my gypsy blood likes that type of thing, but the security of having a place where all your stuff is in one spot, that you can easily access it and then kind of travel from that as a home base is kind of where I'm at. Yeah,
and I think that's where we're... my wife and I have talked a lot about it. I think that's the crossroads we finally reached to. We've been really fortunate that we've been able to maintain relationships with all of our clients, even from the move from California to Texas, moving from Denton up to Denison. So we've been fortunate with that, and I think a lot of that has to do with the internet. No one seems, as inaccessible by location as they used to. But yeah, we're kind of at that same crossroads. We've got years of family and friends in Denton, which is only an hour from here. But we're kind of looking at the same thing of just kind of putting down some roots, and if we get the urge, we'll travel as opposed to, relocating. Probably a little more reasonable approach.
Well, I listened to your interview with Roderick Therese, and he's a big one on owning property.
Yes, he is. He is. He's actually, and it's much appreciated because it's kind of like this fatherly advice thing, you know. But he called me a while back and was kind of reading me the Riot Act, and you know, you guys need to look at this and you need to look at that, and you know, that's very cool. I mean, it was really good intentions. But that's to me the other extreme, you know, like he was talking to me about the smart move it would be to, like, you know, buy an old building and all of that kind of thing. But then I'm like, oh man, you know, go from living in an Airstream and having that kind of freedom to, you know, being owned by a building. That just sounds kind of terrible to me, but maybe it won't in 5-10 years. I don't know.
Well, it's a constant bill every month that every time you put a key in the door, it's cost you money.
Yeah. And that's one thing that we really love about simplifying our life down to, you know, what we have is, you know, if you want to take a day and just like get your head straight and go on a motorcycle ride and think things through and think creatively about a project coming up or whatever, you can do that and things don't completely fall apart in your life, you know?
Exactly.
So there's definite pluses to keeping things simple and low key, but then there's trade-offs in everything in life. So then it's like, okay, what do I do when I start getting into my 50s and, you know, all of that, and I don't really want to, you know, be struggling or whatever. So I don't know. Life, you know, it's like I messaged you back, you know, you were like, why the heck do you keep moving? And I'm like, it adventure, man. You know, it's like, I do love the excitement. And part of it is the way I was raised. My parents moved constantly. And when I was a kid, it drove me crazy, and I was kind of angry about it. But then I'm like, oh, here I go. I'm doing the same thing. But yeah, but I think we're ready to put down some roots. And it's only an hour away where we want to put down roots, so it's good.
Well, I saw the picture of a building, looks like, with a door on it that you said Denton coming soon.
Yeah, that's actually in Dallas, and that the details of that will be revealed later in the year. But I was offered an artist in residency in Dallas. At a studio there, that all I'll basically have to do is show up when I want to do work down there. And I think most of that's going to be geared towards like motorcycle type stuff, that the kind of stuff I've been doing recently. So yeah, it's just kind of a second space, you know, but you got to hype things.
Well, I keep trying to learn from you young guys how to do that.
Yeah. Well, some of us have more P.T. Barnum in us than others, I think. Definitely not more talent, just we speak louder about it. So how long you been doing sign painting?
Well, I was, when you asked me to do this, I kind of sat down and recounted where I was and how I came about doing it. And I guess full-time, it's been 20 years.
Yeah. What did you do before this?
I was a civil servant for a provincial government in Canada here.
I have no idea what that means, but it sounds important.
Well, I was a government worker.
Okay.
They call them civil servants here. And I was working for the provincial government. And so Canada's made up of 10 provinces and 3 or 4 territories now.
Okay.
And so I was working for one of the 10 provinces, which was Saskatchewan, which is about 900 to 1,000 miles east of here.
Okay. So what made you, did you start, when you, I'm assuming you retired from that, or did you just walk away from it, or what drew you into doing it, into getting into sign painting? Why are you laughing? Because I didn't mean to age you prematurely. That's not what I was doing.
That's perfect. So what happened was, I guess I can start at the beginning. As I always kind of knew when I was...
No, I'm very interested to know.
Okay. When I was a kid, I knew that I wanted to be an artist, but it didn't work out that way. My parents had other thoughts. The old school thing of you can't make a living being an artist was the word. And so they were always geared towards higher education and the academics, and the art world was left out. So I went that route, as it turned out. I went and got a white shirt job and everything, but then my passions were motorcycling, and through motorcycling I came to custom art, airbrushing, pinstriping, and actually rode my bike down to California and stopped in at the oldest Harley dealer, which was Doug Perkins, San Francisco, and interviewed, got to know, just met the lady that was doing custom airbrushing in their shop.
Oh, okay.
And from there,
when was that? What year roughly was that?
That was in 76.
Oh, very cool. That was a cool era.
So it was from that led me into the other ends of artwork. And I progressed both in fine art and in sign painting, and airbrushing and pinstriping from that lead in.
Okay. That's almost identical to my own, but so when at this time you were still working for the government in Canada?
Yes.
Okay. So you were just pursuing this as an interest?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess when I started to get really serious about it was when my first son was being born. And so I would practice at night, after hours. And after he was born, I remember holding him on my lap while I was painting at an easel, doing sign work. So that's one of my fond memories of learning.
That's awesome. Did any of your kids end up going this direction, or from being exposed to it like that?
Not yet.
No? Okay.
You never know how it's going to turn out, though. Right?
Yeah, for sure. So, are you there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, your video stopped, but I can hear you fine, which that's all we're really after is the audio, so you kind of have a weird look on your face in the still shot of the video that's got stuck, but...
And you as well.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So what was the transition of government worker to sign painter? Like what got you to jump ship and do it?
Well, I guess the easy answer is I went through an interesting divorce.
Gotcha.
And a fellow that I'd known in searching out my interest had a full-time shop with his family and a couple other sign painters. And he was at a car show in my hometown, which was Regina, Saskatchewan. Okay. And he said, I've just lost my last sign painter. He said, why don't you just come work for me for a while?
Awesome.
And so that's what I did. I went and spent about 14 months working for him. The shop was primarily vinyl. He was the only hand painter. And then what the shop would do is they would lay out a sign and pounce the patterns, and then I would paint it.
Okay.
And that was my exposure to full-time sign work.
Gotcha.
And what I realized from that is I never wanted to do vinyl.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, I suppose compared to like digging ditches in the hot sun, it's not a bad gig, but if you're artistically driven, it can suck the soul out of you.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. It was, I didn't mind the designing on a computer from what I could see, but to sit and put vinyl on vehicles and 4x8s, etc., was just, didn't have any appeal at all. I said that was a young man's game, and I came in later in life, so that wasn't something I was prepared to spend my time doing.
Yeah. So now you're 1,000 miles west, essentially, back over towards, I believe, Vancouver. Is that right?
I'm 4 hours inland from Vancouver. I'm in the Okanagan Valley.
Okay.
And I guess that's actually comes up from the Sonoran. So we're high mountains desert.
Oh, okay. Is that the same, mountain area that's just north of eastern Washington?
Yeah, I'm a little bit further west than Spokane.
Okay.
But this border right south of us is Orville, Washington.
You are just north of where my wife Kaylee's grandparents have lived since the 40s. Her great grandmother and great grandfather bought a piece of property right there, just north of Orville, right on the border, and built a cabin years, back in the 40s. And her family's lived on that land since then. Her grandparents now live there.
It's a small world, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really strange. That's a beautiful area, though. Holy cow! We went 2 years ago and went and visited everybody up there. And I had been to areas like Walla Walla and Spokane when I lived in Seattle. I would go out there sometimes for work, but I'd never gone up north of Spokane, and I was just shocked. It was so beautiful.
Well, that was what prompted me to move here. I moved here in 2002.
Okay.
And I've loved it ever since. It's an interesting economy because it's primarily for retired people and tourists.
Okay. How does that work out for you, getting work and keeping yourself busy?
Not quite as well as I would like. I guess I keep pushing the goal limit, so my goals keep expanding. So I'm not kind of where I want to be. I'm always striving for that next plateau.
Sure. So are you doing motorcycles and cars and pinstriping and that stuff as well? Or are you just focusing on sign painting, or are you doing both?
Yes, all of that.
Yeah. Anything you can get your hands on?
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Know the feeling. So cool. So what's in your future? What are you looking at doing? I'm assuming you've reached the point where you're going to stay settled down.
Well, I don't know, actually. I'm in transition once again. I rented a townhouse here. I went through some interesting struggles last year, and had to reestablish a home base. So I rented here, which started in May. So between May and next May of 2016, I'll have to make some decisions. So then it'll depend on how the business is doing, and whether I can put down roots and buy a building again, or we'll see as the grand adventure continues.
Yeah, I get that. That's one of the things that kind of forced our decision to the surface. When we came up here to this town, I signed a year lease on our studio space, which is, I'll never have a studio like this again. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous, and there's just not that many places like this left on the planet. So in that sense, it's really hard to, give this up. But the lease ends at the end of October, and so that started all the discussions of, what do we want to do? Do we want to stay here for another year? One of the things I think has been challenging is we're in close proximity to Dallas, but in a way, I mean, we're probably, I think, 70 miles from Dallas here, and that's where a big chunk of our work is. And then the other big chunk has been down in Fort Worth, but we're probably, double that in miles from here because of where it's located. So, yeah, it was just like, well, we love Denton. We've got family there. We've got friends there. We've got history there. Let's just go back to Denton.
Nice.
Yeah, so we feel good about it. it's it probably looks a little frantic on the surface if you're not familiar with the distances and everything else. But we basically traded one location for another and still kept everything intact. But as far as lifestyle goes, it's just a place we'd prefer to be back at,
Right on.
Yeah. So you, I'm trying to think. You and Chris DeBell and some of the other guys up there, you guys have gotten together a couple times for a meet. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
No, you're correct. It's been a mini meet, and it's actually been with John Lenning as well.
Okay. Yep. Known John for years. Love that guy. So what did you guys do when you got together and did a mini letterhead meet?
We just did panels, swapped panels, did panel exchange, shared our experiences and knowledge of the trade and progressing.
Gotcha. So that just reminded me, I have a question about your business. It's called Raven Sign Company, which is a really cool name and really cool visuals that come to mind putting that together. But where'd that name come from, and what's that all about?
When I was my name in Saskatchewan was business name was Alley Cat Signs.
Okay.
And when I was in the process of moving, I did a name check in British Columbia, and the name was available. Somebody else was using it, but it had never been registered.
Okay.
And by the time I got to registering it, they became a limited company, and I was locked out of that name.
Ah.
So on my drive here, I said, what am I going to call my business? And I always like the name of having company in your business name.
Okay.
So it was, I'm going to the Pacific Northwest. I'm not going to be quite on the coast. So what's going to appeal to me? So then as I was driving by a place in Alberta, I had ran across ravens, because where I was, there was no ravens when I was growing up.
Okay.
When I ran across this place in Alberta, they had huge ravens, stood quite tall, and stood on the ground. They were big fellas. And I said, that sounds like an interesting name. So when I got here, I did some research, and raven was a mythological creature by the Pacific peoples.
Okay.
And was known as the creator, the trickster. And of course, what do? I'm creating things, and my nickname in college was the trickster.
Ah, layers.
So hence the Raven name really caught on. And then some of my background, my gypsy roots, Raven is a big mythological creature there as well.
Okay. So in the the different tribes that are up in the Northwest, that image of a bird that you see in a lot of their totem images and stuff, is that a raven?
They have both big birds in their culture, are the raven and the eagle.
Okay. Well, that's really cool. My wife and I, one of our geek interests is we've gotten into birding over the last several years, and we actually really enjoy that.
You are a diverse man.
Yeah, I think it's mental illness, but diverse sounds better. So, are you still a motorcycle guy? Do you ride? Is it just something that you had interest in? What's the deal with that?
Well, I'm still interested. Due to circumstances, I haven't had a bike for a number of years. One of my goals this year was to make it to the Sturgis Rally. One of my buddies, actually Tim Peterson with Flat Earth, used to be Flat Earth Sign Company, now Flat Earth Art Company.
Okay.
Lives in Spearfish, and I had an invitation to just go down and spend time with him if I could ride down. Well, I didn't have the wherewithal to have a motorcycle this year.
I see.
The impetus being that this was the 75th anniversary of the Sturgis Rally.
Yeah.
It was 40 years ago since I went to my first Sturgis rail.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So anyway, it's still a plan for another year. I figured out about a week before Sturgis that one of my friends suggested I could have rented a motorcycle, and something I hadn't thought of. But I checked it out, and I could have. Actually, I could have rented a motorcycle out of Missoula, I think, and rode. So.
Okay, yeah, I know that's getting more common. We were able to work on a bike for Indian that went to Sturgis. I don't know if you saw pictures on our feed of that.
I saw them.
Yeah, that was really, for being a motorcycle lover, that was like a super cool thing to be able to get to do, and to take a brand new bike and abuse it like that was awesome.
Yeah, it's always fun when those kind of jobs come along.
Yeah, it really kind of gives you a boost creatively too, because I think there's the normal everyday work, and you push yourself with that stuff to keep it interesting and keep it fresh, but it's those a couple jobs a year that come through, like that bike for Indian, that just is like you want to pull out all the stops, and that's I think creatively that's a necessity, at least for me, to be able to have those occasional jobs where you just got to totally bring it,
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, lots of fun too.
Yeah, I like to keep pushing the limits in all my work, so I will strive to do that in every area that I touch.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what keeps most artists going, is the challenge they have with themselves. I was talking to somebody the other day. I've never viewed myself as a competitive person, and I never viewed, especially with art, other artists as I've got to, beat them at something or, get better at something than they are. But I do have that competitiveness with myself, which is really strange. I'll look at something side by side of something I did a while back, and even if I was proud of it a while back, I'll be like, I need to do better,
Well, that is true artistry, and that's a change from the old days of sign painting, where they didn't share any information.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that changed, because that mentality was still around when I was, a teenager working with my dad, and it was such a turnoff, because, your brain was hungry to learn anything you could, and some of the older guys, were just jerks about it, and I've mentioned it before, but some of the older guys would brag about telling people wrong information so that it would screw their jobs up and stuff, just terrible.
Yes.
So
yeah, I know I had that experience when I was trying to learn the business. There was very little, and that's when the letterheads became such an important part of my growth as a lettering artist.
Okay. So speaking of letterheads, are you going to go out to Cincinnati for the big letterhead meet this year, or you going to not?
That's not in the cards for me. There is a small meet at the end of the month in Saskatchewan.
Okay.
At Pat Welter's. But even that, I don't think I'm going to go to. I've had some other commitments that I made prior to finding out about this.
Okay.
So for this year, I think everything's on hold unless there's something closer. We'll probably get together with John and Chris and a few of the guys at the coast probably this fall sometime after he gets back from his big trip.
Okay. Yeah, I was really contemplating going up to Cincinnati, and maybe doing some podcast interviews there and getting to meet some people in person that I've never met in person but have known for years through other things. But it's just with the project that we've got coming up in Ireland, which has just turned out to be a really cool thing. That just isn't going to work for us this year either, but...
So are you setting up a new studio then back in Denton?
Yeah, we will I'll be setting up the studio there, which will be the mainstay of all of the work that we do. And then the studio in Dallas will be a just kind of that satellite kind of thing where, maybe once or twice a month I'll end up doing a project down there when it makes sense.
Nice.
But yeah, business as usual will be in Denton. We've actually been offered the space that we first moved into in Denton originally, which was in the basement underneath a coffee shop there called Jupiter House Coffee. So we'll be back under there doing our thing.
Yeah, and you had some original sign work painted, I think, on the floor, etc.
Yeah, we painted all sorts of stuff in that building, and we painted tons of stuff upstairs in the coffee shop. So yeah, it'll kind of be like going back into our home environment. And it's right on the town square there, which in the South, especially in Texas, all of the towns, for the most part, have this old town square that was the original hub, and that's where the courthouse would be, and all the little Main Street stores, and all of that's gone through a revitalization over the last probably 5 years. So it's just a bunch of really cool little restaurants and bars and coffee shops and record stores and bookstores. It's a really cool environment, and we're looking forward to being back in the thick of that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sounds.
Yeah, Denton is also it's a college town. It's got University of North Texas and Texas Women's University there. So there's a lot of creativity and youthfulness, and there's a huge music scene there. So it's a really neat environment. So looking forward to that.
Right on.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you came on. I like I said, I know we've crossed paths in the past, and then Chris reintroduced me to your work a couple of years ago, and been wanting to corner you and talk to you about your history with the trade. So I'm glad I was able to talk you into doing it. I know you were a little apprehensive at first.
Well, it's always kind of putting yourself out there, and of course we do that every day, so it's more or less the same.
Yeah, man, you go out and you paint something in somebody's window, the public is watching, man. So
Exactly.
And the only people listening to this are probably other, dysfunctional sign painters and graphic artists and designers. So, you're among good company.
Fabulous. Well, it's kind of interesting, too, to be able to talk about people that have helped me along the way. And that's always a pleasure, because there's, a lot of unsung heroes. Nobody gets here alone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's nice to be able to go back and revisit those people. And I know for me, when I was thinking back on this, the Letterheads movement, and actually in the Mid-Coast, we called it Mid-Coast Letterheads, which was part of, Nebraska, North and South Dakota, Saskatchewan.
Okay.
Kind of a bunch of us that got together, and we would have 4 letterhead meets a year in that group. And that really promoted huge education and hurry. Guys in the Black Hills, Grizz Moore and Tim Peterson, they put on the Gold Rush
Okay, yeah.
letterhead meets. And so I attended all of those except one. So huge amount of learning in a group like that.
Wow, that's awesome. And when was all of that? What period of time was that you were doing that?
That was in the late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, went up to, I think the last one was 2003, maybe 2004 was the last of Gold Rush.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen some of the panels from that people have in their portfolios. I haven't seen them in person, but looks like a really cool thing you were able to participate in.
Yeah, in the years I couldn't go full time. I remember one year I had custody of my sons for the weekend. So I actually went down early because the Black Hills was only 500 miles from me, so a day's drive. And I went down early and got to clean the glass and silk screen the art pieces with Tim and Grizz, and then actually took the piece home a week early, and before the meet started, finished it and sent it back with another fella, Pat Welter, who was going back down for the meet, and so they had a finished piece of artwork already hanging.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I got to do a couple of extra things like that. I tried DeMar varnish, gold on glass 1 year. Went down early again, a day early, and put the DeMar on and let it set up for 24 hours, and tooled it, and then did the water gilding.
Right. Okay. So the work that you're doing now, are you getting to do some gold leaf on glass up that way, or is it what type of work are you mostly dabbling in?
Well, it's you always talked about, the old guys always talked about having a specialty, but it seems like as we've gone around the circle now, the specialty is just being able to do anything with your hands. Yeah,
no, that's totally true, and I think there's enough of a shortage of us that you really do have to diversify, and I know myself, I've had to learn some of the different approaches that I've kind of backburnered over the years because I was busy doing other stuff. But people now, in their mindset with that you're a sign painter is that you can do everything from pinstriping to lettering to gold leafing, everything in between, wood signs, you name it.
Yeah, and that's actually been part of the fun in some ways, because I've had to diversify.
Sure.
So I've learned how to carve and work with some of the new products like high density urethanes, and so it keeps pushing the limits of what we do, and that's what keeps the job interesting. Is that it's not the same. Well, not the same routine every day. Yeah,
for sure, and I think that challenge is what's kept it interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, again, thanks for taking time out of your day and doing this and allowing me to get to know about your past better. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. I've been following your stuff for quite a while. I think John went down to your meet in Big Bear.
Yep, sure did.
Yeah, that's where I heard about you, I think, from there. And maybe a little bit on the Letterville website.
Yeah, I know that I joined that forum. I looked at my profile in 1999 and then kind of drifted in and out. I think the guy that started was Steve Shortreed, who recently passed away, right?
Correct.
Yeah. That forum kind of was the starting point for some other forums, and just the nature of forums are strange to me because they start out with so much energy and positivity and people kind of reinforcing each other, and then that peaks after like 2 years, and then it starts eroding from there, and it's just a weird formula that seems to apply to almost all forums. Never really understood it.
Well, the forum thing, I think, was pretty good because at the time when that started, I didn't even own a computer.
Okay.
So I would go to the public library and log on and check out what other people were doing.
Right.
And of course now, we've got that on our smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can do that anywhere. And then other things like Facebook came into play. And so now it's that and Instagram and there'll be other things, I'm sure, that'll develop in the future.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Where we can stay in touch. It's kind of interesting now because people that I've met from around the world who are in this business, we get to see stuff by them, daily, weekly, monthly.
Yeah. It's really strange, and I'm sure you ran into this too, because you got really active in around the same time that I did. Is back then there was so little to draw from that you were almost starved for it, And I remember running into, different old guys or whatever. And, if you got to flip through their old grungy coffee-stained photo album and look at some of the work they had done for the years that they've been doing it, it was like the biggest treasure on earth to just be able to see, and to go from that to now where, holy cow, just on Instagram alone, I'm just like overwhelmed at the diversity and the quality of work that I can just sit there and scroll through. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that sharing has become huge. Like you said, we were starved for it. I traveled, to the UK a couple times to learn different techniques and see some of the Gypsies scrolling on Gypsies.
Yeah.
And then to meet the lettering artists over there, Dave Kinniston and John Leeson. Fabulous, be in John Leeson's studio and see, stuff that he's kicking around for garbage that I would hang on the wall,
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So those kind of acquaintances that we've met and friends who became friends later are fantastic. It's hard to even describe that because being an artist is kind of a lonely, solitary pursuit.
For sure.
We have our little runs with the public and stuff, but primarily you're working alone. You're standing looking at a wall or an easel.
Yep.
And everything else is going on behind you.
Yeah. No, for sure. Because even then you're alone because your back's turned to everyone and you're just zoned out and you're working. You probably got your headphones on listening to something. It's, very much a solitary pursuit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which I think is, I think that's part of the allure as well as the challenges. I love that. I love the quiet time and the reflecting and all of it that goes with it. I've tried in the past working environments where you have other artists or whatever come in and they're sharing the studio with you and that kind of thing, and it always sounds really cool and really kind of romantic idea, but the reality of it kind of sucked because you got somebody who's wanting to talk to you at those times when you're just wanting to completely zone out and focus on something.
Yes. Well, you get in what they call the zone, right? Because you're focused on what you're doing, you're going with the flow. And then somebody interrupts that.
Yeah.
I spent some time with Tim Peterson on some billboards in South Dakota. And he said, God, I've never talked so much in my whole life.
Yeah.
Because usually we're alone.
Yeah. And I think from talking to a lot of other sign artists, music just seems to be such a huge integrated part of the process, and when you got somebody yakking, you can't really get into the music.
Yeah, I've been following your podcast where you ask everybody what their favorite music has been.
Oh yeah, I'm going there. So let's hear it. What keeps your creative juices going?
Well, I got to mention this right off the bat just to clear the air is Willie Will and I'll Love It.
Awesome. Kindred spirit.
And it was interesting when I was learning pinstriping, and I'm trying to learn how to pull a long straight line, which is probably the pinnacle of pinstriping work.
I still struggle.
I'm so talented at doing it. So anyway, I was talking to Tim Peterson one day about it because, as you know, you're striving for that perfection line. And he said, hey, what kind of music do you listen to? And I said, well, I listen to rock and some country and a little bit of this and that. And he says, well, try some classical music. I said, you got to be kidding me. He says, no, I do it all the time. He listens to NPR. So we have a station up here called the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, CBC.
Okay.
And in the last number of years, they've had what they call Radio 2, which is another band, I guess. And they primarily play classical music for most of the day. And then they have some popular Canadian music for 3 hours on the drive home at night.
Okay.
And, they have blues segments and so forth. So anyway, I started listening to that, and it really expanded my horizons and helped with my striker.
That's very interesting. I've got a whole collection of opera in my iTunes, and sometimes that's when I do my best design work, is I'll just blast opera and design to that, and sometimes that gives me really good results. But I never tried the classical with the pinstriping. That's pretty interesting. I'll give that a shot.
Well, that's what it's all about, passing on for information.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. I guess the old school guys that I like is Van Morrison.
Oh yeah, I've got 26 of his albums on my iTunes.
Fabulous. Now, some of the new people, Elliot Brood and Alabama Shakes.
I've heard the name Alabama Shakes, but I've not heard the other name, and I'm not familiar with their music, either of them. What kind of music?
Well, I don't know what they call. I guess these guys are indie.
Like hipster music?
Indie music, yeah. So they're independent. I don't know if they've signed big contracts or not yet.
Okay.
Elliot Brood is a 3-piece. I think they're a Canadian band.
Okay.
And I don't know. I can't really put them into a category of style of music that I can think of, but it's quite enjoyable to listen to. Alabama Shakes, ran onto them through public broadcasting, PBS in the States, sitting around at night when I had a television that had cable, and they were on one night as a guest on Austin City Limits.
Oh, okay.
So it was interesting to hear them. And then a couple people that came to my light in the last 3 weeks was Leonard Cohen's son, Alan Cohen.
Oh, I didn't know he had a son making music.
I didn't either. And the other one was Lucas Nelson, which is Willie's son.
Familiar with him, and some of that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they have the Jam in the Bus sessions.
Uh-huh.
Which is kind of interesting. They're playing in a van. And
yeah, Waylon Jennings' son, Shooter, has some interesting stuff I've heard, too.
Yeah, I haven't got too much of his stuff. I love Hank Jr. Hank the Third is not quite my style, but Hank Jr. really.
I love the merging of like outlaw country and punk that Hank the Third has done, but some of it just, I'm not completely sold on. But I love the vibe, I think it's fun and it's aggressive and it's kind of wild hillbilly kind of, punk kind of a thing. But yeah, there's something about him that doesn't connect for me.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but, we've all got our opinions, right?
Exactly. I guess one of the surprising things was Eminem came out with a movie, something 49th, I think it was, or whatever. If you lived on one side of the city or the other, was divided by this. And that gave me a new appreciation for hip hop. Was seeing that music, seeing that video, that movie.
Yeah, that's a whole genre that I've got respect for, but just never really connected with either. It's like, you can see the artistry there, and you can see the honesty and the integrity of the lyrics and a lot of it, but it's just not something I want to turn on and paint to.
I understand that perfectly. Yeah. Maybe
it's just because we're white guys. I don't know. But cool. Well, I'm going to call it a wrap, and we'll have to dice this down and do all that editing fun stuff. But
well, I was trying to beat your record of an hour and a quarter or whatever.
Oh yeah. I don't remember who I talked that long to. Was that Bob Dewhurst maybe?
I haven't heard that one. I think it was Gibbs.
Oh, Gibbs Connors, yeah, maybe so. You should listen to the one with Bob Dewhurst. That's like my favorite one because he's such a that dude's a character, and he's he's one of those people that because of his demeanor, like he comes across kind of like that spacey kind of hippie guy. But if you get past that and listen to what he's saying, it's incredibly deep and insightful. It's really amazing. He's a really, really neat guy.
Yeah, I kind of figured that about him.
Yeah, really interesting guy. His studio was just around the corner of ours in San Francisco, and when we started, meeting up and talking and everything, I was just it was a really neat thing for me because he was, he's a really interesting, articulate, intellectual guy, but he's also got that kind of goofy San Francisco hippie thing going on, and it was just a lot of fun. We still talk on a regular basis. It was a nice friendship to have started.
Nice. Well, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it, and got me out of my shell one more time.
Hey, that's all good stuff. So if you're 400 miles inland from the coast in Canada, seek out Cale Trauter.
Perfect. Thanks, buddy.
There, you got a commercial for the for the droves in that area that are listening.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care, bud.
All right. Bye.
Coffee with the Sign Painter is brought to you by the Big D Speed Shop in Dallas, Texas. You can find licensed apparel of Sean Starr's original designs at bigdspeedshop.com. The show is also brought to you by Full City Rooster Coffee Roasters, makers of the Sign Painter's Blend. Coffee that Sean drinks in the studio every day. Now shipping worldwide. FullCityRooster.com. Thanks for listening to Coffee with the Sign Painter, hosted by Sean Starr. You can find all sorts of info about the show and sign painting, including previous episodes, at our website, seanstarr.com.